Well, welcome to another episode of Inner Mastery, where you start to learn the secrets within you so life can build you up rather than break you down. And in this special edition episode, it's a book club. So we are diving in today to Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. We are on chapter 2. Now, I found very quickly that these chapters are robust. They're quite long, and so I'm breaking them in half. So we are going to read up to The Lost Ring. It's page 38 in my book, and that was the discussion that we had in this episode. And it's a really beautiful discussion around the truth of who you are and who you are not. We all get distracted by the contents of the container, by our thoughts, by our emotions. And the truth is, you are so much more than that. That is one tiny aspect of consciousness. And if you just get stuck there, you are not tapping into your true potential. So enjoy the conversation. As always, if you're listening to this on an audio platform as a podcast, please give it a 5-star review on whatever platform that is. And if you're listening here on YouTube, be sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications so that you're alerted as new episodes come up. Now, if you have comments, please put it in the comment section. If you want to be part of our Enlightened Minds, the book club group, there is a Telegram channel. It'll be linked in the show notes and the description, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Hey there, Danielle Matthews here. I am coming to you live from Florida, and today is Monday, so it is book club day. If you're new to my content, I help guide people on their healing journeys, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And today is part of that really mental, emotional, real spiritual side of healing, and that is to gain some different perspectives. Maybe look at the world in a way that you haven't before, gain clarity on who you are not, why challenges are being presented to you, and we do that through conversations through book club. So if you are joining me live for book club, let me know when you get here. And if you're catching the replay, let me know that you're watching the replay. We just started last week, Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth. So previously, we have done The Power of Now. We have done some of Mickey Singer's work before, Wayne Dyer's work, The Power of Intention. And this is a deep book. I realized this week that trying to bite off an entire chapter in 1 week is probably too much because these chapters are like 30 pages long. So this week, I'm just going to kind of get into the first half of chapter 2. This chapter is Ego, the current state of humanity. So, hey, Charlotte, thanks for letting me know you're here. Let me know as you arrive, everybody, that you're here, and we'll kick off. So, as I shared, so the chapter is about the current state of humanity, and really, I would say the current state of you, each one of us. And yeah, good idea to kind of cut it in half. Yeah, because it's a lot. I agree. I was reading this and I was like, there's no way I can talk about everything I want to talk about in 30 minutes with all of this. So I went to about, just for context, I don't know that, I went to about page 38, I think, where it says The Lost Ring. That's what we'll pick up next week. That's about how much I got through that I felt like would cover our time together. So, all right, without further ado, let's jump in. And it was kind of interesting. When he kicked off this chapter, he was talking about how we label everything, right? And you think about when you're with little kids, what do? You point out everything. Oh, that's red. Oh, that's yellow. Oh, that's a dog. What's the dog say? That's a cat. And so all of us are taught about the world through words. And I want you to just put in the chat a 1 if you agree, a 2 if you think no. Do you believe that some combination of basic sounds, right? Hey, Karen. Hey, Lou. Can explain who you are, what a stone is, what a tree is, the depth of it, and the ultimate purpose of the universe? Can this be explained in the language that we have through using words? And I would have said yes, you can use words to explain it. That would have been my reaction initially if you'd asked me that. Hey, Tina. So if you're putting a 1 in the chat, I was with you, but then when I actually started to really ponder and I went, hang on, time out a second. My own direct experience of the fact that I am more than my thoughts and really the greater purpose that my soul is on in this lifetime, there are no words to describe it. And in fact, when I attempt to use words to describe the knowing that my being has, it falls flat. We have these experiences, maybe you've had them in a meditation where you're like, how do I explain to somebody what I just saw, felt, etc. Like it's really, really hard. So I really liked actually how he broke this down. And he said, well, if you think about it, a word is really just a label. It's covering up. It makes your mind believe that you know what it is. Oh, this is, I don't even know. I was going to use an example, but I don't even know what type of crystal that is. I should know, but it's out of my mind. We'll say rose quartz. I have rose quartz somewhere else, but it's like, oh yeah, I know what that is. That's rose quartz, right? Do you really know what it is? Or is that just like a label that it's given? And so your brain feels like, I got this, not a problem. That's rose quartz, we're good. It's really interesting. If you watch yourself, it's like the analytical mind, like it doesn't like the unknown. Okay. And that's why when you step out to do something new, it usually freaks out and you face fear, because the mind likes everything to be in its place, a place for everything and everything in its place, right? And so when we can label something, oh, that's this. Great. Okay, we know what it is. We're good. And it's like, well, hold on. I think you're missing the essence of it. Like he describes how if you actually spent time and rather than just looking at the surface layer of reality, oh, that's rose quartz. But if you actually stared at and looked at a crystal like rose quartz, or like whatever crystal this is, which I'm embarrassed to say I don't recall right now. But if we just spent the next 30 minutes looking at this, not giving it some label, right? Maybe it's even good that I don't even have a label for it, but just staring at it and appreciating it, like you will gain an appreciation for life, for the aspect of life that created this, for the divine, the consciousness that created all things that are in this world. And if you took the time to actually just go, okay, oh, it's rose quartz, boom. I mean, I know this is not right, but we don't have a name for it, and hopefully somebody here does. But if we don't have a label for it and we just appreciate it, I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal to think that this formed, from some combination of pressure and chemical reactions and whatever else. It's like, it just starts to make you go, wow, there is something at play that is far greater than my own mind can even imagine, and that I could even create. Like, I couldn't make this, but nature can, consciousness can, and it just, what he says was, and I loved how he said it. Let me get the words. He said, if you stare at it, it communicates its essence to you. Right? Would you agree that if we stared at a crystal for long enough, or if you stared in the eyes of a tiger, right? Sometimes there's these beautiful images that nature photographers are able to get where you're just like, you can see the soul in that being. And if you just stare at it, he says, it communicates its essence to you. And this is what I loved, it reflects your own back at you. I got chills when I read that. And I was like, yes, I think that's why I'm so drawn to nature, and so many of us are, right? Because it's like you experience the essence of life when you're in nature. And also it reveals that, hey, you too are the same as that. Pretty powerful. And so he writes in the book on page 26, he says, the greatest miracle is the experiencing of your essential self prior to any words, thoughts, mental labels, and images. For this to happen, you need to disentangle your sense of I, of beingness, from all the things it has become mixed up with, that is to say, identified with. That disentanglement is what this book is all about. And I was like, yes, let's go. This really hit home for me because just a brief story to share with you. Many of you know, right? I was 12 years ago in a really severe accident that caused me to have a traumatic brain injury. And I didn't realize it that day, but in the weeks and months that followed, it became very clear that my life was not going back to normal, right? I couldn't work. I couldn't hang out with my friends. I couldn't eat certain foods. I couldn't look at a computer. I couldn't look at a TV. I couldn't look at my phone. I couldn't handle the light from just being outside in nature. I got overwhelmed by any sort of noise. Like, I had to be in a dark room. And what I will tell you, if you could visualize, it was like, well, I don't have anything better than this. So this is my water bottle. It was as if my life had been so full of things that I had identified with. Well, Danielle was a snowboarder. Danielle was a teacher at the time I was teaching. Danielle is the one that always, does well in school. She can always be counted on. Danielle doesn't rock the boat, right? She's really respectful. Like all of these things that I had like glued together as me, all of a sudden I found myself after my accident laying in bed. It was like there was no identity anymore. They told me I would never snowboard again. I couldn't go back to teaching. I couldn't handle it. There were no people to be around to be nice to, right? And I had this moment where I went, well, who the hell am I? I mean, truly, because my whole life up to that point, I had gained my identity through what the world had told me who I was and the achievements I had. And so this container of Danielle was filled with all sorts of accolades and things and blah, blah, blah. And then after my accident, it was like, I'm not going to do it because this thing is full of water, but it was like all of that got poured out and it was empty. And I will tell you what, I was severely depressed and full of anxiety because I was like, well, who am I if I don't have these things? And that turned out to be the starter for my awakening, to realize, oh, there is something here that is always here, right? I'm the container. I'm the thing that allows experiences to move through, I was a teacher for a little bit, now I'm not, right? It was an experience moving through, but I'm the thing having the experience, witnessing as all of these emotions, thoughts, and experiences of life move through the container of Danielle. And that's what he's getting at. I don't know if this hit home, if this is making sense, like high five me, put a 5 in the chat. That's what he was getting at here. He was saying, hey, listen, you are more than just insert your name, right? And whatever comes along with that. You're actually the thing that is experiencing so much. There's so much depth to you. They're just like, oh, you're Danielle. Like, no. There's so much more, okay? But he says in this next section, the illusory self, right? He says, the normal everyday usage of I embodies the primordial error. Does anyone remember what original sin means? You still are a teacher. The classroom has just broadened. I agree, Lou. I think my soul came here to teach, so I'm sharing, just in a different aspect. You're right. So does anyone remember what original sin is defined as? Missing the mark. Okay, so he says, in normal everyday usage, I embodies the primordial error, missing the mark, a misperception of who you are, an illusory sense of identity. This is the ego. So you could interpret that as saying the original way that we missed the mark was identifying with who the ego mind says we are, rather than the being that is there witnessing it, with identifying with the contents of what's in the container rather than the container. Making sense? That is original sin. That is the thing that we forgot. And I love this. I had never heard this Einstein quote. Had any of you heard it? Where he said, where is it? An optical illusion of consciousness. That's what he says about human nature and this reality of how we get identified with the wrong thing. He says it's an optical illusion of consciousness because it feels so real. Like there's stuff in there. And it feels so real and it can draw you in so fully, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, no, that's not there. And when you go through trauma, that's why trauma is so intense for people. The death of a loved one, health diagnosis, accident, losing your job, losing your family. It rocks us because all of a sudden something that we had identified with that was in our container just got shot out. We didn't ask for it to go. We didn't want it to go, but it's gone. And now all of a sudden we're freaking out because we're like, well, who am I without that? Not realizing because of original sin, because of the original mistake where we missed the mark, where we identified with the thing in the container rather than the container. Making sense? Like this is so huge. I love the way he described it. And, he says like, if you think about the stuff in the container, right? Our likes, our dislikes, our past, right? The stories that we tell ourselves about us. These are all of the things that we believe are us, and it makes us feel like ourselves. And the ego identifies itself out of that. Okay, so it's like a computer that's getting programmed since we're little, right? With all of the little things. Oh, I like broccoli. I don't like Brussels sprouts. Blah, 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 blah. Like all of these little things that make you you is really just what's making up the ego. So the mistake is the ego identifies with the computer program, and it says, oh, I am this conglomeration of random shit, honestly, from my past, from my thoughts, from my likes and dislikes. That's Lou. That's Lynn, right? That's Karen. No. You are the thing that is creating space for all of that to be in existence. You're the container, right? Your consciousness made manifest. That's what this is getting at. And so this is powerful. If this can sink in for you, this is everything, because this is the original mistake. We talked about how this is talked about all philosophies. And in the Eastern philosophy I study with the yogic philosophy, they talk about the kleshas. And the kleshas, like it starts out with the original thing is that we have forgotten. It's like we're watching a movie and all of a sudden we're so engrossed with the character in the movie that we believe we are the character. And what this is saying is, hey, you're not the character in the movie. You're the one watching the movie. You with me? Like this, same thing, Christianity, original sin, missing the mark, identifying with the wrong part, forgetting that you're more. That's what we're getting at. All right, you are the witness to your thoughts. You are the container, you're not the contents. This is what he's pointing all of us to. And I don't know, this analogy helps me. Hopefully it helps you. But it helps it sink in, right? Because this is deep stuff. This is really, really deep stuff that he's getting at. So the next section, he's talking about the voice in the head, right? We all have that voice in our head. And if you're wondering what voice, that voice, the one that just asked that question, that's the voice we're talking about. Okay, so the voice in your head, he's talking about, and how many of you have experienced being around somebody that, like this lady on the subway that he was talking about, that was literally talking to herself and like angrily talking to herself and like having a full-on dialogue with herself. Put a 1 in the chat if you have experienced that before. I remember I experienced it in San Francisco. When we went out to San Francisco, I don't remember how old I was when we went, but I was like, what's going on? There were just all these people on the street having conversations with themselves. You're like, are they on drugs? Are they crazy? Like, what is going on? And interestingly, right, he witnesses this and follows her. and then, she gets swallowed up by the elevator or whatever happened when she went into the building, the same building that he was going into. And then he finds himself, I just loved it. He finds himself contemplating, and I'm reading from page 32. I thought this was great. He said, I was somewhat taken aback by what I had just witnessed. As a mature first-year student at 25, I saw myself as an intellectual in the making, and I was convinced that all the answers to the dilemmas of human existence could be found through the intellect, that is to say, by thinking. I didn't realize yet that thinking without awareness is the main dilemma of human existence. That sentence right there, I'm going to read it again, because did you catch that? I didn't realize yet that thinking without awareness is the main dilemma of human existence. I'll articulate this the best way I can. We have, so my accident, right? I can just come to that because maybe you can relate and it's easy to think about. I was stuck with my thoughts. And I realized one day that my thoughts were making me miserable. And I was like, I don't want to have these anymore, right? They're making me question if I want to be here, like suicidal thoughts. I'm like, what in the hell? No, I want to stay in this life. Is it possible to get rid of those thoughts? And I slowly started to realize that, holy cow, I can choose to give energy to my thoughts or withdraw energy. And if I give them energy, they expand and can lead me into a literal panic attack. Or if I withdraw energy, they're there and they're a little agitating, but then they just move through. And I was like, oh, I'm not my thoughts. Huge realization for me, because up until that point in my life, my mind was constantly chatty. It never stopped. It was incessant. And I was like that crazy person on the subway, except just mine was internal. And I loved how Eckhart shares that, he's in the bathroom like contemplating all of this, and he says something along the lines of, I hope I don't end up like her, right? And then he realizes, oh my God, I just said that out loud, because the guy looks at him and he's like, holy, I already am her. We all are already her. We're all already possessed by this thing that is having conversations in our head that we don't even want to have. And the moment you realize that you can bring awareness to this and choose is the moment that you're liberated, because so many reactions, emotions, thoughts are unconscious and automatic, because that computer program has been laid so well that we unconsciously and automatically are having reactions to life, or having thoughts come in, or having emotions come in based on what's occurring. And what we're saying here is bring awareness to it. Realize that you can have conscious and deliberate thought. And you are liberated when you do that. That's everything, right? Remember, I didn't realize yet that thinking without awareness, I'm saying bring awareness to the thinking. Don't let it be unconscious, let it be conscious. That's the main dilemma of human existence. We don't even need to read the rest of the book, right? Like, he laid it out for us. Hopefully the rest of the book, he helps us out with what to do. But this is what I teach in Inner Management Mastery, right? How to get to the space beyond your thoughts, so you can actually tap into who you truly are. And when your thoughts are quiet, that's when you access your intuition. And all of you, I know, have put a 3 in the chat if you have ever had an intuitive hit. You've experienced intuition. Everybody has. I just guarantee it. I feel like I'm going to see a lot of 3s. Right? That is there, but it only comes when we're quiet. It's an inner knowing. Sometimes it's when we wake up or at night, like when there is peace in the mind, in nature, insights come in. I know my boyfriend, like when he gets stuck with with his work, he does IT programming, he just stops and he goes and fiddles around, or he'll take a shower, or he'll go for a swim in the springs. And he says it's when his mind is quiet and he's not trying to figure it out, that's when the knowing drops in and he gets it, because he's tapping in to consciousness. He's tapping into the quantum field. He's tapping into intuition, which all of you have done before, it looks like, many of you. If you haven't, we should talk. We can help with that. But this is what we're talking about. So he, on page 34, just the last part of this section, he said, I didn't realize yet that thinking is only a tiny aspect of the consciousness that we are. Nor did I know anything about the ego, let alone being able to detect it within myself. Right? So we are, like, thinking is such a tiny piece of who we are. Right? It's like one thing in the container. Like, you are the container. You can connect in through intuition, through so much. You can connect in and tap into so much more. Like, there's so much more for us to explore in this life than our stinking thinking. So, he talks about content and structure of the ego. He kind of is trying to lay out how the ego creates itself, which I think I explained pretty well, right? Contents are like the things that it identifies with. So he talks about like the child with a toy. It's a content. And then the structure is that the ego gets its sense of self, right, through, it's built into the ego to identify through association with objects, right? And so the suffering that gets created in our lives, in human lives, is because of this sense of my. Well, that was my toy that you took from me. And so the child, right, believes, well, it's me, it's part of me, and you just took part of me, so it screams. And very quickly, you can just put another thing in the child's hands, and it's like, oh, now I'm happy with this. This is mine. And then that goes away, another thing, right? Like, that's what happens when you're kids. It's easy to just distract them with something new. But as we get older, this hardens in, and all of a sudden, well, we identify, my house is me, my car is me, my job is me. Right? It is a reflection of who I am. And so if something happens to the house or the car or the job or whatever, we freak out. But also it creates a ton of inner stress. And I loved how he said, this is what actually feeds consumerism. I hadn't thought about it like this. But he says, what you identify with is all to do with contents, whereas the unconscious compulsion to identify it is structural. So that was the structure content thing. where is it? He talks about how, if we are just continually seeking for things, he says, like, this is the cycle he laid out. I wrote it down. He said, the ego identifies with things, and then it gets attached to those things, and then it becomes obsessed with those things. And so it creates a consumer society where it's like, well, I have to have that thing, and they have that. Well, I need to have more. Oh, they have that. Well, I have to have it too. And what happens is that then the economic structures of our society start to reflect this need for things. I think we see it the most in the United States. Consumerism is freaking wild here, and how we measure up against others. And he points out, he says, if gone unchecked, this striving for more is a dysfunction. It's a disease. Think about cancer. It's just multiplying. It's literally just striving for more, not even realizing that because it's growing these tumors and these things, it actually is going to kill the host within which it's able to live. Because if you're just constantly striving and thinking about your own growth and your need for more, you're going to destroy things. Okay? And that's what's going on in society, right? We need to realize, like, hey, we got to care about more than just ourselves. We're all connected, and we need to look out for that. So he says that's why object proliferation is so big in our times, because we can't feel ourselves, our beingness. We forget that we're the container. We don't feel that aspect of ourselves because we're so distracted by the contents. And so we keep trying to fill it with content so that we feel better. Thinking, well, if I just get that raise, if I just get that new car, if my son or daughter just does this, then I'm going to be okay. And the reality is, like, have you ever experienced this? Like, you get a new car and you're like, but then the feeling like fades, and it fades pretty darn quick. And then your mind is like, no, there's something more you need. Like, oh, no, sorry, you got to put this other thing in the container, and then you're going to be okay. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. And it constantly does it. And we just keep doing it. We just keep following suit, like totally unaware of the fact that you don't actually need to keep filling the container. You need to realize you are the container and you have it all. And stop identifying with these things. That's what it is. Hang on, let me see this comment over here on Facebook. I love the line above this section. When you live in a world deadened by mental distraction and things, you don't sense the aliveness of the universe anymore. I highlighted that also. And that line here, it's on page 37. And I wrote a comment. So I'm going to read this again and see if you relate to this. So the comment here is, when you live in a world deadened by mental abstraction, you don't sense the aliveness of the universe anymore. Look at architecture. I went in Spain. The architecture there is incredible. If you ever are able to go to Granada, go to the Alhambra. There were literally like a door, like the door behind me. That door, an artist would spend a lifetime on. And this entire palace is that. You walk in there and you feel like the presence of spirit. Like you feel the presence of something. Why do you think cathedrals were made so incredible? It was like spirit was part of it. That beingness was part of it. It came alive within you when you walked in there. Look at the architecture now in this day and age. Does it inspire you to think about more? No, it's deadened. Like architecture these days, it's just like concrete slabs and I mean, yes, of course, there's some places in the world where it's amazing, like Dubai will inspire you, right? It's like going to inspire the spirit to go, wow, look at what's possible. Anything is possible. And so when we, I just think it's so beautiful. Does anyone else see this? Like I go into cities and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just dead. Like it's dead. And that's because of the mental stuff that he's talking about, mental abstraction. And so you don't sense the aliveness of the universe, right? But there is some architecture where you sense the aliveness, right? I remember seeing Van Gogh's painting. It was interesting because he talked about Van Gogh in here. When I went to Amsterdam, I went to the Van Gogh Museum. I've never really been into art. I sat in that museum and I could not take my eyes off of his paintings because I don't know how he did it, but you felt the life of what he painted. Like, it was like, I mean, I remember I'm seeing like sunflowers. I'll never forget how I felt in that museum, because I was like, it's alive. Like, that's not a painting. That is alive. And he talks about in here how he would stare at a chair and he'd paint the chair and you felt the beingness of the chair, because everything comes from the divine. Everything comes from consciousness. Everything's made from it. So beingness is in all of it. You know, and he even talks about how in ancient societies, like, that they used to look and they would say that everything has an essence of beingness within it. And so they appreciated it. And they spoke to it and dealt with it with that, knowing that spirit was like living in there. Just so cool. So, all right, we're at time. Yeah, okay, so I was about right with what I thought we could get through. Page 38. I'm going to end with this. So he kind of gave a homework assignment. He said, look, a good spiritual practice is to take this and kind of audit yourself. So I'm going to ask you some questions. And this is on page 38, right before the lost ring. We'll start with the lost ring section next time. But 6 questions to ponder this week. Number 1. He says you need to be alert and honest to find out, for example, whether your sense of self-worth is bound up with things you possess. Is your sense of self-worth bound up with your possessions? Uh-oh. It is for many. Do certain things induce a subtle feeling of importance or superiority? Are you like, yeah, I got this. I'm a little better than them. The ego is so freaking tricky. Don't judge yourself. This is just like, it's part of being human. Does the lack of them make you feel inferior to others who have more than you? This is tricky. If you're around someone that has $1 million home, do you feel like you're less than because you don't have one? Interesting. Do you casually mention things you own or show them off to increase your sense of worth in someone else's eyes and through them in your own? Are you just like subtly but intentionally talking about, oh yeah, I own a Mercedes, blah, 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 or whatever, insert the thing. Do you feel restlessness? No, that's not the word. Where am I? Do you feel resentful or angry and somehow diminished in your sense of self when someone else has more than you or when you lose a prized possession? I used to care a lot about things. And I had this learning after my accident because I put all my stuff in storage. And then a year later, went to see what I had kept in storage. And I was like, why in the hell did I spend money to keep this stuff? Because prior, I had been so identified with it. Well, it was me. And now I looked at it and I was like, yeah, that's just a bunch of stuff in the container that I'm just paying money for. This is stupid. And I got rid of it, right? Except I think I had a suitcase worth of stuff I brought home. It was like stuff from my travels that were just like fun memories. It's amazing what possessions do to us. So audit yourself, reflect on these things. I think I read all of the questions to you. It's on page 38. We will start back next week at the lost ring, and we'll finish out chapter 2 next week. All right. Make sure you share this with a friend, right? These are powerful conversations. Share this on your own Facebook page. Invite people to our community. Let's just expand this. Awareness is going to liberate all of us, right? It's our own inner work that gets us there. So thanks for joining. Lots of love to all of you. I hope this was insightful, impactful. If you have any other comments, put them in Telegram, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.